People like you can't afford anything in here. So put it down before you embarrass yourself. The woman behind the glass counter said it without lowering her voice, and the whole shop heard her. Under the chandeliers of Étoile Patisserie, on the marble floor of the most expensive bakery in Accra, an old woman stood with a small honey loaf held against her chest like it was the last warm thing left in the world. Her wrapper was faded, her sandals were worn thin at the heel. Her hand trembled, just slightly, and the loaf trembled with it. "I told you," the old woman said quietly. "My grandson is coming. He will pay. Everybody has a grandson coming." The second girl behind the counter laughed, the kind of laugh that is meant to be shared with the room. "Madam, this is not a roadside kiosk. Please, you are blocking real customers." There were no real customers yet. It was 6:47 in the morning, and the ovens had only just been lit. But that did not matter. What mattered was the loaf and the old woman's shaking hand, and the way the first girl reached across the counter, turbocent, and pulled it away so hard that the old woman stumbled, her shoulder knocking the edge of the display, her knees folding toward the cold floor. And that is where I want you to stay for a moment. On that floor. Because everything that happens after this, everything, turns on what one hungry, tired strangers chose to do in the next 4 seconds. Most people looked away. One did not. Her name was Afia Owusu, and she had come to Étoile that morning not to buy anything. She could not have bought anything. She had come to sell. 12 small bags of bafrat, fried the night before, still faintly warm inside a cloth bag, which she sold from a folding table on the corner outside, because the corner outside a rich bakery is where hungry rich people sometimes remember they are hungry. She was standing near the door with her bag when the old woman fell. And before she understood what her own body was doing, she had crossed the room and was on her knees, her arm behind the old woman's back. "Easy, Ma, easy, I have you. I am all right," the old woman breathed, though she was not yet. "Thank you, my daughter. Why did you push her?" Afia looked up at the counter. Her voice was not loud. That was the strange thing about it. It was very quiet, and somehow that made the two girls stop laughing. "She is old enough to be your grandmother," she said. "She forgot her money. That happens to everybody. You could have let her make a call." "And who are you?" The first girl looked Afia up and down. Slowly, the way you measure something you have already decided is worthless. Her eyes went to the cloth bag, to the oil stain on the strap, to the plain brown dress. "Look at you. You can't afford anything in here either. Two of you. Poverty finds poverty." Afia did not answer that. She has told me since that there was nothing to say to it, because it was true, and also because it was not the point. Instead, she opened her bag and took out one bafrat, the roundest one, still soft, and she pressed it into the old woman's hands. "Here, eat something small while you wait for your grandson. You have been standing a long time. And you?" I ate. She had not eaten. That was the last of the batch she had planned to sell, and the 12 setas it would have brought was the difference between transport home and walking home. But the old woman's hands were shaking, and Afia's mother had a rule she had never once broken. You do not let an elder go hungry in front of you and call yourself a person. So she gave it away, and she stood, and she gathered her bag to leave, because she was already late, and because the two girls behind the counter were still watching her the way cats watch something small. "What is your name?" the old woman asked. "Afia, Afia Owusu, Afia." The old woman said it like she was setting it down somewhere safe. "I will remember that." And here is the part nobody in that bakery could have guessed. The part that makes me want to tell you not to look away for the next few minutes. The old woman's name was Adwoa Sarpong, and 3 weeks earlier, a company had quietly bought the failing chain that Étoile Patisserie belonged to, all 9 branches of it, for a sum with a very specific number of zeros. The company was called Sankofa Group, and Adwoa Sarpong was the reason Sankofa Group existed at all. She had started it 40 years ago with a single charcoal oven and a tray of tea bread, and she had handed it to her grandson only when her knees finally told her to. She had not come to Étoile that morning as a customer. She had come without telling anyone to see how the people who now worked for her family treated a poor old woman who had, as far as they knew, no name worth knowing. She had her answer, and she had Afia's name. What she did not yet have was a plan. That came later that same day. And to understand it, you have to meet the young man who had been waiting outside in a plain gray car the entire time, drumming his fingers on the wheel, wondering why his grandmother had insisted he park around the corner and stay out of sight. His name was Kwabena Sarpong. He was 31 years old, and he owned the ground the bakery stood on, the building above it, and 8 other buildings like it across the city. The first man glanced at his street. I think that morning you would have seen a quiet man in a cheap gray shirt and old shoes, a man who looked like he might drive somebody important for a living. And you would have been half right. 'Cause that was exactly the story he was about to start telling. When his grandmother came out of the bakery leaning on a young woman's arm, he got out of the car fast. "Ma, what happened? Why are you limping? Nothing happened that a good chair will not fix." She waved him off. Then she pointed at Afia, who was trying politely to leave. "That one, I want to talk to her. Bring the car." "Ma, she has somewhere to be. Look at her." "I am looking at her," said Adwoa Sarpong. "I have been looking at her for 10 minutes. Bring the car." Afia looked at the plain gray car and the plain gray driver and thought, "At least these are not those bakery people." "Ma, I really cannot. I have a table on the corner. If I leave it, my things will walk away." "Then we will drive to your corner," the old woman said, in the voice of a person who has not been told no in a very long time, "and I will buy everything on your table, and then we will talk." That is how Afia Owusu ended up sitting on an upturned crate on a dusty corner in Osu, with an old woman on the crate beside her eating bafrat one after another, and a quiet driver leaning on the car with his arms folded, listening to everything and saying nothing. The old woman asked questions, the way a baker taps a loaf, listening for what is hollow inside. "Where did you learn to fry like this?" "From my mother." "Where is your mother?" "Gone, 2 years now." "And your father?" "Gone before her." "What happened?" And this is where Afia went quiet, and the driver, who had been staring at the traffic, turned his head. "My father borrowed money," Afia said finally, "for my mother's treatment, at the end. From a man named Aguiman, who lends to people who have run out of banks. 214,750 setas is what is left. I pay what I can. It is never enough to touch the top of it, only to keep the man from my door for another month." She said the number, the way you say a thing you have said to yourself in the dark 1,000 times, flat, no drama in it, which is the way real numbers sound when they are eating you alive. "So, that is why I fry bread at night and sell it in the morning, and give the last one away to old women who fall down. Because if I start counting what I cannot afford, I will never do a single kind thing again." The driver looked away from her then, quickly, as if he had seen something he was not supposed to see. And the old woman put down her half-eaten bafrat and said, "I will pay it." Afia laughed. It was not a happy laugh. "Ma, you fainted in a bakery this morning because you could not buy one loaf. That," said Adwoa Sarpong, "is a different conversation. I will pay your father's debt, all of it, on one condition." Here it comes, Afia thought. There is always a condition. She had learned that the way you learn the shape of a step you have tripped on before. "My grandson," the old woman said, "is 31 years old and has the personality of a filing cabinet. He does not go out. He does not laugh. He trusts no one, because everyone who has ever smiled at him wanted something, and he can smell it now like smoke. I am old, and I am tired, and I would like, before I go, to see him beside someone who did a kind thing when she thought no one who mattered was watching." She reached over and took Afia's hand, and her grip was surprisingly strong. "I am not asking you to marry a stranger tomorrow. I am asking you to be promised to him, to let him court you properly, in front of my family, for as long as it takes for you both to decide. And while that is happening, your father's debt will be gone, and you will breathe for the first time in 2 years. That is all. If at the end you feel nothing, you walk away, and the debt stays paid, and I will have lost nothing but money, which I have too much of anyway." Afia stared at her. "Which grandson?" The old woman turned and pointed at the driver leaning on the car. "That one." The driver went very still. "Him?" Afia looked at the quiet man in the gray shirt, the old shoes, the folded arms. "He drives you." "He does many things for me," the old woman said, which was not a lie, though it was very far from the truth. "His name is Kwabena Kojo, some people call him. He earns a small salary. He does not own a house or a car. That one is not even his, it belongs to his employer. So you see, I am not selling you to a rich man. I am giving you a poor honest one and clearing a debt at the same time. Where is the trick in that?" That was the first lie. It was such a small one, and it was told so gently, and it would take 6 months and nearly everything to undo it. But I am getting ahead of myself. Stay with me. Because the way this lie grows is the whole story, and if you leave now you will miss exactly the moment it turns. Afia did not say yes that day. She said she would think. And the old woman said she could think until the next morning. And Afia said that was not enough time to decide something like this. And the old woman said, "You have already made my grandson wait 31 years. One night is generous." That night, Afia sat on the floor of her one room with the bills spread in front of her like cards she could not win with. And she thought about her father's face at the end. The shame of it, the way the debt had followed him into the ground, and then turned and followed her. 214,000 setas, a driver with kind, tired eyes who had looked away when she talked about her father. And by morning she had made her choice, and I think you already know what it was because you would have made it too. So they were promised. Quietly, in Adwoa Sarpong's sitting room, with 2 of her nieces as witnesses and a plate of tea bread on the table. And Kwabena, who signed his real name on a paper that Afia was told was a promise agreement, and never thought to read closely, drove her back to her corner afterward in the gray car that he had told her was his employer's. And neither of them spoke for a long time. "You didn't want this," Afia said finally. "I didn't," he admitted. "Then why?" "Because she used her savings." He kept his eyes on the road. "Everything she had put away for her old age, she is putting on your father's debt. When my grandmother spends money like that, it is not really about money. She saw something. She is usually right about what she sees." He glanced at her once, and I wanted to know if she was. Here is the thing he did not say. He was certain, that first week, that Afia was pretending. He had seen 100 versions of her, or so he thought. Women who smiled at his grandmother and cried the right tears and turned out to have a list. So he decided he would watch her. He would play the poor driver, and he would wait. And sooner or later she would ask for the house, the car, the allowance, the ring. And then he would know, and he would end it, and his grandmother would finally stop bringing him wives. But Afia did not ask for anything. What she did, the very next week, was hand him a small piece of paper with an account number on it. "What is this?" he said. "My repayment plan. I am going to pay your grandmother back. Not all at once, I cannot, but every month something. I have written the first date there." She lifted her chin. "I did not agree to this so that people could say Afia sold herself to clear a debt. The debt is paid. Now I owe her, and I pay what I owe." He took the paper and stared at it like it was written in a language he had lost. He had spent his whole adult life waiting for people to reach into his pockets. He had never once had someone try to put money back. That was the week Kwabena Sarpong started to suspect he had made a mistake, and not the kind he had planned for. Work came for both of them in the same place, though only one of them knew it. Sankofa Group had bought the bakery chain, and the chain was rotten in ways that did not show from the street. Recipes were vanishing. Good junior bakers were quitting, and the reason was always the same when you got them alone. Said, quietly, at the door, "The senior chef takes what you make and puts her name on it. And if you complain, the manager says you are lucky to have a job." The senior chef's name was Adjoa Danso. Her family had been in the baking business in Kumasi for 3 generations, and she wore that fact like a crown and used it like a hammer. Kwabena, who owned the company but told everyone he was only the boss's driver sent to run errands, wanted to see the rot with his own eyes before he decided who to cut. So when Etoile announced open auditions for a new head baker, he arranged, quietly, for one particular corner seller to be told about it. Afia almost did not go. She had no certificate. She had a folding table and a cloth bag and her mother's recipe book, its pages soft and brown at the edges, spotted with old flour and older tears. But she went, and she brought the one thing she knew was hers all the way to the bone. A honey loaf, the same kind the old woman had been holding the morning they met, made the way her mother had taught her, with the honey cooked until it caught at the edges and went just past sweet into something darker and better, a taste you could not forget and could not quite name. The audition room was full, 40-something bakers, each with a tray. When Afia's turn came and she set down her honey loaf, she saw a woman across the room go completely still. And then, when the judges lifted the cloths off the trays one by one, there it was on Adjoa Danso's table too. The same loaf, the same dark honeyed crust, the same shape. "That is my loaf," Afia said, before she could stop herself. The room turned. "Excuse me?" Adjoa's voice was smooth as glaze. "This is a family recipe, 3 generations. And you, I'm sorry, where did you train?" A corner in Osu, a ripple of laughter. "She sells fried dough from a table. And now she says my grandmother's recipe is hers. This is why we do not open these auditions to just anybody." "I posted this loaf," Afia said. Her hands were shaking now the way the old woman's had shaken over the counter, and she pressed them flat on the table to stop them. "Months ago. A photo. From my own phone. Anybody can post a photo and claim a thing," said the manager, a soft, heavy man who had already looked twice at Adjoa and once at the door. "Where are your drawings? Your notes? Your proof? You came to an audition with no papers. And this is the moment. This is the moment the whole thing had been walking toward. And I need you to hear how quiet it got, because the quiet is the point." Afia reached into her cloth bag and took out her mother's book. She opened it to a page soft with age, and she turned it around so the judges could see. There was the loaf drawn in pencil by a hand that had been dead 2 years. There were the measurements. There was the honey. And beside it, in the margin, a note, "Cook it till it hurts to smell it, then 1 breath more, the way Maya liked it." And there was a date. Years old. Older than Adjoa Danso's claim by a long, long way. "My mother wrote this," Afia said. Her name was Comfort Owusu. She is the Maya in that note. Her own mother, my grandmother. 3 generations, madam. You are right that this loaf has 3 generations in it. They are just not yours. The manager did not want to hear it. He had already chosen. "The paper proves nothing," he said. "Miss Danso's family is known. You are not. Apologize to her and you may still leave with your dignity." "I will not apologize for my mother's bread." "Then you are finished here. Security." And that is when the quiet driver, who had been standing at the back of the room the whole time, with his arms folded watching, said one word. "Wait." The manager barely glanced at him. "This does not concern the help. Wait outside with the car. Ask her about the honey," Kwabena said, ignoring him, looking at Adjoa. "Since it is your grandmother's recipe, why cooked so dark? Any baker can copy a color. Tell me why. What does the dark do that the light does not?" Adjoa opened her mouth. "It is," she said. "It is a preference. Traditional. My grandmother preferred it dark." "That is not an answer. That is a shrug." He turned to Afia. "You. Why dark?" And Afia, who had cooked this loaf 10,000 times, who had burned it and saved it and burned it again, learning where the line was, said the thing that cannot be faked. "Because when the honey goes past sweet, it stops being about sugar. It goes bitter at the very edge, just a little, and the bitter is what makes you taste the sweet at all. My mother used to say a life is the same. If it is only sweet, you cannot taste it. You have to cook it till it almost hurts." She looked at the loaf. "That is why dark. Not because somebody preferred it. Because that is where the truth of it is." Nobody laughed now. The manager's face had gone gray, because he had felt the floor move under him, and he did not yet know why. Adjoa was still talking, still saying my family, my name, still reaching for the crown, but the crown was gone. And the quiet driver took out a phone, made one short call, said, "Come in now and bring the ownership file," and put it away. When the door opened, 3 junior bakers came in, not called by the manager, called by Kwabena days before, quietly, one by one. And they said, out loud in front of everyone, the thing they had been too afraid to say, that Adwa Danso had taken their work and signed her name to it, that the manager had known, that Afia's loaf photo had been on a wall in the staff room for months, where anyone could have seen it and copied it, that they had all seen it there. 3 victims standing up, not one. 3. "You cannot fire me," Adjoa said when she finally understood which way the wind had turned. "You are a driver. You do not have the authority to fire anyone." "You are right," said Kwabena. "I do not." He looked at the manager, "But I know a man who does, and I am going to tell him everything I saw here today." Afia got the job. She did not understand yet how a driver had turned a room like that. She thought perhaps he had simply been brave. She thanked him afterward in the corridor and asked him, half laughing, "Are you sure you are only a driver? For a moment in there you sounded like you owned the place." And he could have told her then, "This is the thing I want you to hold on to." He could have told her right there, in that corridor, when it would have cost almost nothing. Instead he said, "I just don't like watching liars win." And he looked at his shoes, and the second lie folded quietly over the first and grew. The months that followed were the best months of both their lives, which is exactly why what was coming was going to hurt the way it did. Afia baked. Her honey loaf went on the menu at Etwile under her own name, and people lined up for it. She paid Adwoa Sarpong back a little every month, stubbornly, and the old woman took the money with a straight face and put every cedi of it into a drawer to give back later, though Afia did not know that. Kwabena came to her corner in the evenings in the gray shirt and helped her fold her table and carry her bag, and pretended he was doing it because he had nothing better to do. They talked. She made him laugh, which his grandmother had said could not be done. He told her true things about himself, small ones, hiding the one big untrue thing underneath them, like a stone under a rug. "Your boss," she said to him one night, counting the day's small money, "whoever owns Sankofa. He raised the pay for the junior bakers, tripled the overtime. My friends can send money home now. He must be a good man." Kwabena was quiet for a moment. "He is not as good as you think," he said. "He hides things. He tells himself it is to protect people. It is really because he is afraid." Afraid of what? Of being wanted for the wrong thing. He would not look at her. So he lets people believe he is smaller than he is, and then one day he cannot remember how to stop. "That is a sad way to live," Afia said, not understanding that she was talking to him about him. "Tell your boss I said so." "I will," he said. The truth came out at the worst possible time, the way it always does. There was a woman named Nana Ya, from an old wealthy family, whose parents had once talked with the Sarpongs about a marriage that Kwabena had never agreed to. She heard, through Adjoa, who had lost everything and wanted someone to bleed for it, that the great Kwabena Sarpong had secretly promised himself to a corner girl who fried dough. She did not believe it. She came to Atoil to see the corner girl for herself and to warn her off, and she walked up to Afia at the counter and said, "Stay away from what is not yours." "Kwabena Sarpong is spoken for. You have the wrong person," Afia said. "I don't know any Kwabena Sarpong. My Kwabena is a driver." And Nana Ya laughed, a real laugh, an astonished one. "A driver? Is that what he told you?" She took out her phone. She turned it around, and there he was, on the screen, in a suit, at the front of a business page, under a headline with his name, and the words owner and chief executive of Sankofa Group. "That is the man who owns the floor you are standing on," Nana Ya said. "That is the man who owns the bread in your hands." A driver. Afia did not shout. People expected her to shout later, and she never did. What she did was much worse. She went very quiet, the way she had gone quiet in the audition room, the way she went quiet whenever something in her was breaking so slowly and so completely that noise would have been a mercy. Because she understood all at once everything, the car that was never his, the room he had turned with a word, the recipe he had somehow known about, the grandmother's small salary and poor honest boy, the promise agreement she had signed without reading, and the real name at the bottom of it, all of it. A lie cooked dark and served to her by the one person she had let close enough to feed her. And here is the thing you have to understand about Afia Owusu, the thing that turned this from a sad story into the story I am telling you now. Her father had died of a lie. A smiling man with a safe investment had taken everything her family had and vanished. And the shame of it had killed her father as surely as any sickness, and her mother had followed him from grief. Afia did not hate liars the way most people say they hate liars as a thing to mention. She hated lies the way a burned child hates fire in the body below thought. And she had let a liar promise himself to her. When he came to the bakery that evening whistling, in the gray shirt, she was waiting by the ovens. "Take it off," she said. "Take what off? The shirt, the car, the driver. All of it. I know, Kwabena. I know who you are. So take it off and stand here and tell me, to my face, how long you were going to let me pay you back for a debt with money you could burn every day and not notice." He did not deny it. To his credit, he did not try. At first, he said, and his voice was not steady, "I thought you wanted her money. So I tested you, and you passed, again and again, and I did not know how to stop. And then I loved you. And I was afraid that if you knew what I was, you would look at me the way you look at that man, Agiman. Like a thing that lends and takes. So you kept lying, because you loved me. Yes, you knew about my father." Her voice cracked once, then steadied, which was worse. "You knew how they died. You knew what a lie does in my family. You sat on my floor and watched me talk about it, and then you went home and put on the gray shirt again the next morning. Every kind thing you did, you built on top of it, the job, the honey loaf on the menu, us. All of it is standing on a lie, which means none of it is standing on anything. Afia, I want the promise ended." She untied her apron and folded it, slowly, the way she folded her table at night. "I don't want your family's money. I never wanted it. I want to go somewhere that you do not own the ground and stand on it and find out what I actually want when there is no rich man's shadow lying across it. Do not follow me. Do not send men to watch me. Do not fix my life from behind a curtain. For once in your life, Kwabena Sarpong, do nothing." And she walked out past the ovens. He's past the counter where an old woman had once fallen, into the street, and he let her go because it was the first thing she had ever asked him for that he could actually give. He did nothing. It nearly killed him, but he did it. He did not send money. He did not send men. He removed himself from the small foundation Afia had once mentioned, wanting to start for bakers with no capital, and put it under an independent board, and told them plainly, so that it would get back to her, that he was doing it so no one could ever say he used it to buy her back. He fired the manager who had covered for Adjoa, and every senior person who had traded jobs for silence, and he did it in the open with their names in the letters, so the whole company would know that the rot had been cut. Adjoa Danso was banned from every kitchen Sankofa touched, and it turned out that was most of the kitchens in Accra. But he did not go to Afia, not for weeks. What he did instead, and this is the part his grandmother told me herself, with tears standing in her eyes, was go quietly to the old neighborhood where Afia's aunts and cousins lived, the ones who had once treated her like a servant. And he did not announce himself, and he did not throw money. He fixed a roof that had been leaking for years. He carried cement. He sat on a low stool and ate what he was given and did not once say who he was, until an old auntie squinted at him and said, "You are the one from the newspaper." And he said, "No, Ma, I am only a man learning how to be useful without being in charge." He was learning, at 31, the one thing his money had never let him learn: how to serve someone without owning them. Adwoa Sarpong found Afia at a new corner, in a new part of the city, selling honey loaves now instead of bafrat, with a small line of people who had followed the taste across town. The old woman bought a loaf and sat on an upturned crate, the way she had the first day, and she ate it slowly. He did not send me, she said. You should know that. He does not know I am here. He has done nothing you told him not to do, which for that boy is the hardest work of his life. Ma, Afia's throat was tight. You lied to me too, poor honest boy, small salary. I did, the old woman said. And I have thought about it every day since. Because you were right to be angry, and I am too old to pretend I was clever instead of wrong. But I will tell you what I saw, and then I will leave you in peace. I saw a girl give away her last bread to an old woman she thought was nobody. In 40 years of money, I have never once been able to buy that. Not one loaf of it. When you find it, you do not test it and trick it and hide behind a gray shirt. You kneel down in front of it and you say thank you. My grandson knows that now. It took losing you to teach it to him, and that is a hard, expensive way to learn. But he learned. She stood slowly, her knees complaining. He is not asking you to forgive the lie. Do not forgive the lie. Only decide, when you are ready, whether the man who told it has become someone new. That is all. The bread is very good, my daughter. Better than the first one. You cooked it darker. And she went. He came at last, on an ordinary evening, to the new corner, on foot, in a plain shirt that was plain because he had chosen it, and not to fool anyone. He did not bring flowers or a car or a check. He stood a little way off until she saw him, and then he came and stood in front of her table with his hands empty. I am not going to explain, he said. There is no explanation that is not just the lie wearing better clothes. So I will only introduce myself, and you can decide if you want to know me. My name is Kwabena Sarpong. I am not a driver. I own Sankofa Group, and I was born with more than I have ever earned. And I was so afraid of being wanted for it that I made the one person who never wanted it feel like a fool. I have spent 2 months learning how to fix a roof and carry cement and do a good thing without putting my name on it. I am not asking you to marry me. I am not asking you to trust me. I am asking if I can buy a loaf of your bread at your price like any stranger and stand here while you decide whether a liar can become an honest man in front of you. Afia looked at him for a long time. The line of customers waited. The evening went gold and then gray. You may call me Afia, she said at last. That will be 12 setas. He paid it. He had exactly 12 setas in his pocket, in coins, because he had walked and she watched him count them out. And something in her that had been folded flat for 2 months began very slowly to open. They did not marry that year. She made him wait, and he waited well, which is a thing rich men are almost never taught to do, and every evening he came and paid his 12 setas and stood while she worked. And slowly the two of them built something that had no lie under it, only bread and honesty, and the darker sweetness of a thing cooked right up to the edge of hurting. The morning they did marry, months later there was one loaf at the center of the table, not a tall white cake. A honey loaf, cooked dark, from Comfort Owusu's book, the same book. Its pages a little browner now. Adwoa Sarpong sat in the front, a drawer in her house at home, full of every seti Afia had ever repaid her, waiting to be given back as a wedding gift. And at Etoile Patisserie, across town, a new sign had gone up in the staff room, written in Afia's own hand, and enforced now whether or not anyone rich was watching. No person who walks through that door will be judged by their sandals, and no elder will ever be turned away hungry, and every loaf will be cooked to the truth of it, dark at the edge, honest all the way through. Our story began with a hungry old woman, a stolen loaf, and one kind act done when no one who mattered seemed to be watching. It nearly ended in a lie big enough to swallow all of it. And it turned, in the end, on the oldest and simplest thing there is, the thing you cannot fake and cannot buy and cannot cook light. The truth right up to the edge where it almost hurts, and then one breath more. If you felt something in the space between that fall on the marble floor and that final, honest 12 setas counted out in coins, do one small, honest thing for me now. Leave a comment with the name of a person who was kind to you when they had no reason to be. Tell me their name so I can read it. And if you want to stay for the next story, the way Afia stayed for the man who finally told her the truth, you know what to do. Subscribe, and I will meet you here again.